I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago that I met a 43-year-old woman. Her name was Layla. She was of average height, had ordinary hair, and wore clothes that weren't actually very expensive. But here's the thing. Whenever she walked into a room, everyone immediately noticed her. I'm not just talking about myself here. The people sitting next to her were constantly turning to look at her too. During one of our conversations, I asked her what she did to achieve that. Was she doing something different with her skincare? Was she working out? I was actually quite curious about it. She then smiled and replied, "When I wake up in the morning, I pay attention to what I'm carrying in my mind." That's all she said. So that was it, basically. That day, that sentence really stuck with me. But to be honest, I didn't really believe it at first. I mean, for years we'd always been taught different things about beauty and attractiveness, different products, routines, or diets. Of course, while doing all of that, we'd never asked what our minds were doing, or maybe we'd just never asked ourselves, I thought. Now I want to clearly state that question to you. And first, I want to mention that throughout this video, we'll be discussing 9 highly effective things, but this will definitely not be in the style of a motivational speech. My goal here is specifically to hold up a mirror to you. And believe me, once you notice certain things, you'll already have a better grasp of the reasons behind them. By the way, I've saved the most critical point for last, so I wholeheartedly recommend you watch all the way to the end. 1. Whatever your mind carries, your body wants to reflect it. First, I want to point out that there's a truly intense exchange between the mind and the body. It's a constant, unceasing process. And believe me, that exchange isn't one way at all. Whatever you feel, your body actually picks up on it very well, and whatever your body experiences, your mind is incredibly aware of it. Of course, these two systems don't operate completely separately from one another. Especially in the mornings when you wake up, take a look at your face. Are you carrying the stress of the night? Or are you feeling a bit anxious this morning, for example? Your face knows this immediately. Your muscles might be slightly tense, your jaw might be clenched, and there might even be a fine line forming between your eyebrows. Of course, I'm not just talking about today. This is actually a situation that's been building up over months. You might not notice it yourself, but the person across from you picks up on it immediately. Your skin knows it too. In women with chronic anxiety, cortisol levels rise significantly, and this directly has a negative impact on collagen production. As a result, a more tired-looking complexion naturally emerges. Pores become significantly enlarged, so they change in appearance, and healing naturally decreases as a result. This is actually the result of an observation. It's not some personal interpretation or anything like that. And no single cream can solve this on its own. As long as the underlying cause continues to operate in the same way, the surface will naturally revert to the same state each time. Hair is well aware of this phenomenon. In women under prolonged psychological stress, a condition called telogen effluvium, a type of hair loss, is commonly observed, and this is a clinically recognized, very clear and real condition. Naturally, the hair molecules exit the growth cycle and adapt to a sort of shedding cycle. So the shampoo you use constantly has nothing to do with this situation, and vitamins are likely insufficient as well. So if the root cause is psychological, the solution comes directly from there. In addition, posture plays a significant role. In such a situation, your shoulders start to slump forward, and your chest begins to cave in. Of course, this isn't merely a matter of habit. Initially, it's somewhat of a burdensome situation, and we can say it's a clear reflection of the mental burden on your posture. Essentially, this kind of posture begins to automatically take root in the body over time. In other words, the muscles almost memorize this emerging position and tend to stay that way constantly. No matter how much you try to change your body, since the mind is still carrying the same burden unconsciously, it tries to exhibit the same movement. Let's also consider the situation from the opposite perspective for a moment. A woman who truly feels calm and at peace in her mind naturally walks differently, more naturally. Even her gaze is soft yet resolute. Consequently, her voice comes out clearly, without hesitation or trembling. And the expression on her face is, of course, more serene and vibrant. What emerges isn't a performance. It's actually a sign of a natural state flowing from the inside out. And when you look at such women, you don't think, how well-groomed she is, but rather, there's something genuine about this woman, and that something can't be bought from the outside. 2. The tendency to complain. First of all, I'll admit that what I mean by complaining might seem like a small thing. For example, things we say a few times a day, like, this traffic is terrible, this job is incredibly exhausting, or nobody understands me. Sentences like these can feel harmless and perfectly normal. In fact, most of the time we're actually right. There might have been heavy traffic that day, or work might have been genuinely exhausting. However, I wanted you to know that the issue here isn't about being right or wrong. The issue here is what this habit actually does to your mind. When complaining becomes a habit, the mind enters a state where it's practically programmed to constantly scan for what's wrong. So when you wake up in the morning, you reflexively switch to scan mode. Before the day has even begun, before anything has happened, the complaints start about the coffee being cold, whether the weather will be hot or not. Each time, this cycle deepens a little more and becomes a bit more automatic. It's no longer a choice, it's like an automatic reflex. Of course, this doesn't just wear you down from the inside. It also radiates outward as energy. And people, believe me, can sense this before they even hear your words. What's it like to be in the same space, the same room as you, for instance? Does spending time with you lighten someone's mood, or does it weigh them down? They'll never tell you this, but they feel it. And based on that feeling, they make a decision. Unconsciously, a judgment forms about whether or not to spend time with you. Now, at this very point, I'd like to ask you something. Can you visualize the energy you've spent complaining over the past week? I'm talking specifically about the moments when you were complaining. Add it all up and think about how much of your mind you've devoted to that. What could you have done with that energy instead? When you visualize this a few times, the picture that emerges will truly surprise you. Research on this topic clearly shows that people with a constant pattern of negative thinking are perceived as far less appealing in social interactions by those around them. But you probably already sense this even before seeing the scientific research. No one wants to be around someone who's constantly complaining. People tend to postpone meeting with that person, respond to their messages late, and keep conversations superficial to avoid delving deeper. Maybe the same thing happens to you, without you even realizing it. By the way, letting go of complaining doesn't mean sweeping everything under the rug or drifting away from reality by saying everything is great. Some situations are truly unfair, and some people are truly exhausting. We know that. However, you aren't obligated to voice everything so heavily. You can carry some things silently over time. For example, starting tomorrow morning, try not to complain at all for one full day until evening. Just one day. You can complain to yourself, but don't voice it. Don't bring it up in conversations. Don't post it on social media. When you look in the mirror that evening, you'll notice that day felt very different to you. Lighter, more like yourself. Because that day, your mind stayed focused on yourself rather than carrying others' mistakes. 3. Calmness is in every sense a matter of choice. Before diving into this crucial point, let me clarify. Most people mistake calmness for a feeling, something to be felt, or a matter of luck. They say things like, I'm just a nervous person, that's just my nature, or my family has always been like that. As if this were a fixed, unchangeable truth. As if calmness were a trait granted to some women, but not to others. It isn't. In reality, calmness is a decision, a skill. It's learned, reinforced, and deepens over time. But to make that decision, you first need to see this, Reacting impulsively is a habit, and habits change. They change slowly, sometimes with difficulty, but they do change. For example, someone annoys you. Your first reflex is to react, to raise your voice, to argue internally, to replay that conversation in your head for hours, to spend the night dwelling on what that person said. Every time you use this reflex, it gets stronger. Your nervous system memorizes this path, and then one day you don't even need to make a choice anymore. You just go there automatically. At that point, you're no longer making the decision. The habit is making it. Of course, naturally, staying calm doesn't erase this habit, but it stops it. It creates a momentary pause. Asking yourself, am I choosing to react right now, or am I letting it pass? Takes just a second. That 1 second can change everything, really, because in that 1 second, you're the one reacting. Otherwise, the habit takes over. The difference is huge. Now, what I want to say here is this. A calm woman's appeal isn't about dominance. It's about serenity. These two things are completely different. A dominant energy pushes people away because it feels threatening. People are cautious around her, words are measured, and the relationship stays superficial. A serene energy, on the other hand, draws people in because it instills a sense of trust. People breathe easily around that woman, and people want to feel safe, always, in every relationship, in every setting. A woman who provides that sense of safety is never forgotten. Picture this in your mind. Who were the women in your life who impacted you the most? Were they the ones who spoke the loudest, or the ones who remained the calmest? Most often, the latter. Because calmness isn't a sign of weakness. On the contrary, it's a sign that there's nothing unresolved within you. Someone who is self-assured doesn't shout. They don't feel the need to prove themselves because they already know. Ultimately, this translates to life in the following way. For example, once a week, identify the situation that triggers you the most. Just one situation. Is it your child, someone in traffic, or a colleague at work? It doesn't matter what it is. This week, try reacting differently in that situation. Just that one situation. Don't touch the rest yet. Start with a single point. Calmness grows through this accumulation, not through big decisions, but through the choices made in small moments. And after a while, when you look back, you realize that calm woman is you now. 4. Attractiveness tends to decline with cortisol. We've come to one of the most important and valuable points, because many women feel they've lost their beauty but are looking for the reason in the wrong place. They try a better cream, experiment with a different routine, or maybe change their hair color. All of these are superficial, and the surface will keep returning as long as the underlying source persists. Here's the reality. Cortisol is the stress hormone, a chemical produced by the body in response to danger, designed for survival. In short-term stress situations, the body uses it, then returns to balance. This is normal. This is healthy. The problem is chronic stress. Cortisol levels that remain elevated not for days, but for weeks and months. At that point, the body is no longer fleeing danger. It believes it is living within the danger, and it acts accordingly. Looking at it from another angle, researchers at Stanford University have documented that in people under chronic stress, the skin's barrier function weakens, collagen synthesis slows down, and inflammation levels in the body increase. What happens when these three factors come together? The result is skin that ages faster, looks dull, is prone to breakouts, and appears uneven. The fatigue you see in the mirror when you wake up isn't just from lack of sleep. It might stem from the toll that months of stress have taken on your skin. In addition to this, cortisol doesn't just affect the skin. It accelerates hair loss. We already discussed this in the previous point. It contributes to fat accumulation in the abdominal area. It lowers sleep quality. And as sleep quality drops, cortisol levels rise even further. It's a cycle. Once you're in it, it gets harder to break free because each step fuels the next. Take a moment to pause and think. You might be looking for the answer to your problem in the wrong place. Maybe what you need isn't a more expensive serum, but less cortisol. Maybe it's not a new hair care product, but rather the need to lighten the mental load. Did something inside you say, "Yes, but that's so hard," while reading this sentence? I know, it's hard. But one of the simplest things you can do to lower cortisol is breathing, really. Of course, breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, just 2 minutes a day. It sounds so simple, almost silly, but this technique shifts your nervous system from sympathetic mode to parasympathetic mode. That is, from fight or flight mode to rest and recovery mode. Cortisol drops with this shift. It's a measurable, repeatable effect. 2 minutes, right after you wake up, before you check your phone. As many of us might guess, the second tool is sleep. Staying away from bright screens until 11 p.m. is one of the easiest ways to break this cycle. Screen light suppresses melatonin production, leading to delayed and shallow sleep. Cortisol levels are high in the morning, and your body is already in stress mode before the day even begins. You might be spending money on your beauty routine, but what are you carrying in your mind as you go to sleep each night? With what worry, what conversation, what unfinished business do you close your eyes? This is also part of the routine, perhaps the most important part, and right now you're probably not even counting it. I also want to say this. Do these two tools, breathing and sleep, seem very basic, very simple to you? Did you think to yourself, "I already know this"? Then ask yourself, are you doing them consistently, every day? Most people know but don't do it. And because they don't do it, they don't see results. Then they say, "These don't work." No, what isn't done doesn't work. What is done works. The difference is that simple, that clear. Ultimately, lowering cortisol doesn't require a major transformation program. You don't have to rebuild your life from scratch. 2 minutes of breathing in the morning, a little screen time break at night. That's how small a start it is. But small starts are always better than never starting at all. When you look in the mirror a month later and notice that change, that subtle glow in your skin, that fading trace of fatigue under your eyes, you'll want to attribute it to a product. Don't. You did this from the inside. 5. Perspective easily transforms into body language. Right at the start of this section, let me return to Layla's story. I met with her a few more times during that period. Once we were sitting in a small cafe watching people pass by outside, and I asked her, "What exactly changed? I mean, what did you actually do?" I expected the answer to be a routine, a habit, a technique. She laughed. She set down her cup and thought for a moment. "The angle from which I look at the world has changed," she said. "Now when I walk into a room, I think not about what I'll take from people, but what I can give them." Then she shrugged, as if she'd said something very simple, and that was exactly it. But within that simplicity lay everything. Of course, naturally, this statement is fully evident in body language, because body language is the outward expression of the mind, and you can't force it to change. Instructions like stand up straight, smile, make eye contact, work for a while. Then the mind returns to its old place, and the body follows suit. Lasting change comes not from the surface, but from a shift in perspective, from within. To give an example, the room you enter to take something is different from the room you enter to give something. In the first, there's a subtle tension. Will my expectations be met? Will I be liked? How do I look? What did they say? This tension carries over to the shoulders, the eyes, the voice. It may not be noticed, but it's felt. In the second, this tension is absent. The shoulders are back, the neck is straight, the gaze is calm and open. There's a sense of readiness, but it's not defensive. This difference may seem small, its impact is not. In fact, since body language is a reflection of what you're thinking, trying to correct it often backfires. The muscles of a woman forcing herself to stand straight eventually tire, and she collapses back into her old posture. But when her perspective shifts, the body does this without being told. It adjusts on its own, because what she's carrying is different now. For example, the next time you enter any setting, a work meeting, the grocery store, meeting a friend, it doesn't matter. Try this. Instead of asking, "What can I gain from this? How do I look? What are they thinking?" Ask, "Who can I be of service to here? Who can I give my attention to? Who can I see?" It's a small shift, but the body feels it instantly. The shoulders shift, the breath changes, the facial expression changes, without any of it being done intentionally. Remember, people notice this transformation before they hear the words. There's something different about you, but they can't quite put their finger on it. "Has something changed?" they ask. "Did you get a haircut, lose weight, or just come back from a relaxing vacation?" No. It's just the way you walk into a room that's changed. And because this change comes from within, it's permanent. You don't have to repeat it, and you don't have to forget it, because that's who you are now. Let's look at it from another angle. Think of someone you've met in your life who's had the biggest impact on you, someone about whom you've said, "There's something about her." Did she come to mind just now? She probably wasn't the most beautiful woman in the room. She wasn't the youngest and maybe not the most stylish either, but there was an aura around her. People turned toward her, listened to her, and wanted to spend time with her. Now go back and remember how that woman entered the room. How she sat, how she spoke, how she looked at you. It was exactly that perspective translating into body language that you saw, and that moment left something with you. Something you haven't forgotten, even years later. The bottom line is, you too can leave that kind of impression on someone. Don't take this lightly, because most women don't even think about it. They just think, "What's the point of my influence?" But people remember you. They remember how you made them feel. They remember whether you made them feel light or heavy while you were with them. And this feeling is largely shaped by what you carry in your mind as you walk into the room. Perspective translates into body language. Body language leaves an impression, and that impression becomes a memory. The chain is that long, and the first link is in your hands. 6. A morning ritual sets the foundation. Especially the first 30 minutes of the morning cast the mold for the day. I don't want to sound like a motivational speaker when I say this. It's the truth. Whatever frequency your nervous system starts at the moment of waking, it tends to revert to that frequency throughout the day. Think of it like a musical instrument. However it's tuned in the morning, it plays that note all day. It's possible to correct a mistuned instrument later, but it's exhausting. Unfortunately, most women start their mornings like this, reaching for their phone before their eyes are even fully open. Notifications come in, messages, news, others' posts, snippets of someone else's life. From the moment the mind wakes up, it becomes attuned to others. Before finding its own center, it gets swept up in the outside current. And what does that current mostly bring? Comparison, a sense of lack, a to-do list, thoughts about something someone said. The mind is already occupied before the day even begins, but not with something that belongs to you. So even if this isn't your morning routine, does this scene feel familiar to you? Did a voice inside you say, "Yes, that's me"? It must be happening. Maybe not every morning, but often enough. And anything that happens often enough becomes a pattern. Actually, what needs to be done isn't complicated. Don't spend the first 10 minutes after getting out of bed on your phone. That's all. What will you do in those 10 minutes? Do whatever you want. Drink a glass of water, slowly, without rushing. Look out the window and see what's outside. Sit quietly, stretch a little. Give your mind some space to hear its own voice. In those 10 minutes, your brain comes back to itself. It takes a breath, truly, before the day even begins. Besides that, pay attention to what happens afterward. There's a difference in the rest of that day. A subtle but real difference. You feel less swept along. Your decisions feel a bit more like your own. When someone says something, it affects you less, because that morning laid the foundation, a small, solid foundation, and every day built upon it unfolds differently from a day that isn't. The key question is, what is the connection between this ritual and beauty and attractiveness? Think about it this way. A woman who starts her day tired, disheveled, and with a mind preoccupied with others from the very first moment of the morning, and a woman who starts her day centered in tune with her own voice, could be the same person, the same face, the same hair, the same clothes. But from the outside, they look different. One carries an invisible weight, the other does not. People can't describe it, but they feel it. And that feeling is a big part of what we call attractiveness. For example, try it tomorrow morning. Just tomorrow. Put your phone down for the first 10 minutes. Don't do anything else. Don't create a big ritual. Don't put pressure on yourself. Just those 10 minutes. When you go to bed that night, reflect on the day, how it went, what you noticed, how you felt. It's a small experiment. But the results of small experiments are far more convincing than big decisions. Also, I want you to notice this. Those 10 minutes aren't just a routine, they're a boundary. A boundary you set for yourself, one you don't have to explain to anyone, a quiet but powerful boundary. It's saying, I have a moment to myself before the day begins. It sounds small. But for a woman who, since she was 35, has woken up every morning to someone else's sense of urgency, diving into the day without ever hearing her own voice, for her, these 10 minutes are a revolution. I'm not exaggerating, because a mind that's constantly tuned to others eventually forgets what it wants, what it feels, and what it needs. And a woman who's forgotten this carries an emptiness inside, no matter how well-groomed she may appear on the outside. That emptiness shows, somehow, somewhere. Ultimately, when you start practicing this morning ritual, some mornings won't go as planned. You'll be late, the kids will scream, the phone will ring the very first second. Those days will happen. When they do, don't judge yourself. That day is over. Start again tomorrow. The power of the ritual isn't in its perfect execution, it's in the accumulation of repeated days. Not every morning, but most mornings are enough. Most mornings, bit by bit, build a woman. And when you see that woman in the mirror, you recognize her because she's someone who chose to make time for herself. 7. The voice of your inner dialogue reflects clearly on the outside. First, I want to ask you this. How do you talk to yourself, really? Have you ever sat down and noticed this? What goes through your mind when you make a mistake? What's your first thought when you look in the mirror? When you experience a moment where someone makes you feel small, what's going through your head after that moment passes? The answers to these questions matter, because that inner voice doesn't just stay in your head. Every time I talk about this, Cynthia comes to mind. She's a 51-year-old elementary school teacher. I've known her for a long time. She's of average height, with brown eyes, and her face lights up when she smiles. She's an intelligent, patient, hard-working woman, but the dialogue she had with herself was ruthless. After any failed attempt, she'd say, "This is exactly what I expected from myself. No surprise there." If something went wrong in the classroom, she'd think to herself, I couldn't have pulled this off anyway. She'd say these things as if they were jokes, with a faint smile. But they weren't jokes. They were building up. Actually, over time I realized, she had a similar tone when talking to others as well, a posture that seemed to be apologizing slightly. At the end of his sentences, his voice would drop. It would fall instead of rising, as if he'd already accepted that what he was saying wasn't really important. A tone that conveyed the message, I'm here too, but I'm not really important. He wasn't saying it, but his body was saying it. His voice was saying it. His eye contact was saying it. The people across from him picked up on this without it being put into words. So let's address this. Why is internal dialogue so effective? Because the brain processes what we tell ourselves as if it were a real threat. When you say, "I acted like an idiot," the nervous system perceives it as an attack, just as if it had been said from the outside. Cortisol levels rise, muscle tension increases, defense mode kicks in, and this defense mode shows up in your face, your voice, your posture. If you go through this cycle dozens of times a day, its cumulative effect cannot be underestimated. That said, consider the opposite. A woman with a fair, even gentle inner voice toward herself. Someone who, when she makes a mistake, says, "It happened. What can I do now?" Someone who doesn't declare war on herself when she looks in the mirror. This woman's voice sounds different, calmer, more grounded, more self-assured. It doesn't come from a rehearsal. It comes from within. And people sense this difference, not consciously, but they sense it. Rest assured, you can start changing this today. But let me tell you this, simply telling yourself to think positively doesn't work most of the time. The brain rejects things it doesn't believe. Instead, try this. For a week, take note of the negative things you say to yourself. Just take note. Take notes. Keep them in mind. Jot them down somewhere. Don't try to change them yet. Just observe. See how often they occur, what triggers them, and which patterns repeat. Because simply seeing them already sets things in motion. A habit that's noticed ceases to be automatic, and anything that ceases to be automatic becomes changeable. 8. Choosing your environment is a product of mental hygiene. I want to start with this simple truth. The mind processes whatever it takes in. It's that simple and that important. The sounds you hear every day, the images you watch, the people you spend time with, all of these enter your mind. The mind doesn't choose, sift through, or filter these things. It takes them in, it processes them, and over time what's processed becomes your inner voice. To put this into daily life, you wake up in the morning, you open your phone, you look at someone's seemingly perfect life, vacation photos, home decor, a body that looks flawless, then someone else, then a news story, something that causes anxiety, then a post full of complaints, then an ad, a product that promises to fill a void in your life. All of this happened in 5 minutes, and your brain processed it all. It made comparisons, it felt a sense of lack, it tensed up a bit, and you haven't even gotten out of bed yet. Of course, even if this isn't your morning routine, how many times a week do you get caught in this cycle? Be honest, because this cycle doesn't have an immediate effect. It builds up over time. It leaves a small mark each time, and those marks eventually form a pattern. Also, here's a note from the US. Research shows that social media use, especially on platforms involving visual comparisons, significantly increases body image anxiety and chronic stress levels in women. The average daily screen time for American women is quite high compared to other countries. But this isn't just an American issue. This pattern exists wherever there are phones. The numbers differ, but the pattern is the same. Looking at it from another angle, your choice of environment isn't limited to social media. People who constantly complain, constantly compare, and make you feel a little smaller each time are also part of this choice. Every hour spent with them leaves something in your mind, and you pay the price for that hour for hours, sometimes days, by replaying that conversation over and over, unable to process what was said. This bill isn't visible, but it's very real. Ultimately, cut one out this week, just one. A social media account you follow, a voice you listen to regularly, time spent with someone in your circle. Just one that drags you down, leaves you exhausted, makes you feel small. Just one. And a week later, see how much space has opened up in your mind. The emptiness might feel unsettling at first, because you're used to being full. But that emptiness is actually breath, and a mind that breathes looks very different from the outside. 9. Gratitude is a practical tool, not a cliché. For example, What do you feel when you hear the phrase practice gratitude? Most people roll their eyes. They think to themselves, yeah, I know that, and move on, because that phrase has been repeated so often it's lost its meaning. Magazines write about it, social media posts share it, everyone touches on it in some way. And cliches no longer mean anything. You hear them, but they pass by unprocessed. The problem isn't with gratitude. The problem is how this practice is explained. Of course, there's also this. Gratitude has a neuroscientific basis. UCLA researchers have shown that a regular gratitude practice increases activation in the medial prefrontal cortex and reduces activity in the amygdala, which is directly linked to the stress response. So this isn't just about feelings. The brain's chemistry is changing. Cortisol levels drop. The nervous system calms down. And this calmness eventually shows on the outside, in tone of voice, facial expressions, and relationships with others. It's not about words, it's about chemistry. I also want to point out that most people are doing this wrong. It's not enough to say, I'm grateful today. Making general statements like, I'm grateful for my family, or I'm grateful for my health, isn't enough. These statements don't change your mindset because you don't truly feel them. You just say them automatically, and they pass by just as quickly. It's like doing an exercise without proper form. It looks like you're doing it, but it doesn't have any effect. Specifically, try this. Before going to bed at night, after putting down your phone, right before turning off the light, just pick one thing. One thing, a moment from today that was truly good, no matter how small. Maybe someone showed you unexpected kindness. Maybe your morning coffee turned out exactly the way you wanted it. Maybe you managed to be alone for 10 minutes in the afternoon and that silence felt good. It doesn't matter if it's small. In fact, it's better if it's small, because the brain already knows the big things but is programmed to overlook the small ones. Of course, after you've found that moment, do this. Don't just say, I'm glad that happened. Dive into that moment a little. Visualize it in your mind. Feel how it made you feel once more. Where in your body did you feel it? In your chest, your shoulders, your face? 30 seconds. That's all. Stay in that moment for 30 seconds. Rest assured, women who practice this regularly see a measurable decrease in chronic anxiety levels within 3 to 8 weeks. Sleep quality improves, and as sleep quality improves, cortisol drops. As cortisol drops, your skin changes, your body changes, your energy changes. It's a chain reaction, and the first link in that chain is those 30 seconds. Actually, this isn't an exercise where you put on gratitude glasses and see everything through rose-colored lenses. It's a concrete tool that resets your brain, lowers cortisol, and nourishes your beauty from within. But if you use it like a cliché, it works like a cliché, meaning it doesn't work. If you really use it, that is, if you use it with genuine feeling, it really works. The difference is that subtle and that significant. Now, after these 9 points you've just heard, can I give you a very brief summary? In truth, none of these are foreign to you. You've likely heard them somewhere before. However, as you might expect, there's a huge difference between knowing something and living it. And this difference is actually one of the things that might have been holding you back. The very fact that you've watched this video all the way through already reveals something clear about you. Beauty, charm. You already know these aren't things added from the outside, not big, dramatic, life-changing decisions, but quiet, unseen decisions. Do you remember Layla, whom I mentioned at the beginning? That woman in the cafe who shrugged her shoulders and looked out at the world, the one who said her perspective had changed. Believe me, she didn't achieve that change in a single day. First, she made a decision. Then, with that decision, she made the next right one, then the next. Over time, these decisions turned into habits, and those habits shaped her identity. And one day when she walked into the room, everyone started turning to look at her, without her even realizing it. I'm sure you're that woman now too, and everything you need for this is already within you, not somewhere out there, not in some product you can buy, not in another body. Right here, right now, and it truly begins with you. Please don't forget to subscribe. I love you, and I want you to love yourself too.